I'm Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old and I live in Austin, Texas. I'm a senior financial advisor, and for most of my adult life, I've been obsessed with one thing: control. Control over my career, my spending, my credit score. My life was planned, stable, and exactly the way I wanted it. Until one Tuesday morning, everything unraveled. I was pouring my coffee, half listening to the news, when my phone buzzed. A bank notification. I thought it was just my usual low balance alert, but the number stopped me cold. 4,267.89 due in 7 days. Loan payment. What loan? I opened the app. My name, my information. My credit tied to an $800,000 mortgage I never signed for. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, and then I saw it. The property address, 3429 Whispering Oak Lane, Cedar Park. I'd been there. Last summer, my sister Samantha dragged me to an open house there, whispering, "Someday I'll live in a place like this." Apparently, someday was now. And she did it. In my name. That was the moment my carefully built world shattered. But what Samantha didn't count on was this: I was done letting her take from me. This time, I was fighting back. I wasn't supposed to be the sister people noticed. That was always Samantha. I was the reliable one. The girl who color-coded her binders and maxed out her Roth IRA before turning 25. The one who brought her own lunch to work, who knew her credit score by heart, who could recite APR rates like poetry, and that wasn't by accident. I grew up in Round Rock, Texas, in a modest brick home just outside Austin. My dad, James Carter, worked in small business banking until he retired. My mom, Linda, was a middle school math teacher. We weren't rich, but we were secure, and I learned early what that took. Every Sunday night, while other kids watched cartoons, my dad would sit me at the kitchen table and walk me through budgeting with a yellow legal pad. "Live within your means," he'd say, tapping the pencil on the pad. "Spend less than you make and always pay yourself first." I didn't know it then, but he was giving me armor. Samantha never needed armor. She was charm incarnate. Blonde curls, dazzling smile, always the center of attention. Where I had to earn everything, grades, praise, space, Sam just had to show up. People loved her instantly. Teachers, neighbors, boyfriends. Even when she messed up, which was often, they brushed it off as Samantha being Samantha. Me? I got labeled intense, uptight, too serious. And maybe I was. But I was also the one our parents could count on. When I turned 6, I begged for a Barbie dream house. I circled it in the JCPenney catalog for weeks. It was the only thing I wanted, and I got it. 2 days later, I found it in Samantha's room. The furniture missing, the doll's hair chopped off. I cried, she cried harder, and somehow I ended up apologizing for not sharing. That was the beginning of a pattern. Sam took, I made peace with it. Our parents played referee, but only when it got loud. In high school, it got worse. She borrowed my clothes without asking, usually the ones I saved up for, and returned them stained or stretched. She once stole my homecoming dress and wore it to a party 2 nights before the actual dance. I still remember standing in the bathroom with a damp towel scrubbing out someone else's red punch. College didn't help. I went to UT Austin, double majored in finance and accounting. Sam bounced between schools, then dropped out after 2 semesters. When she got banned from a few campus events after a frat party incident, she used my student ID to sneak into career fairs and mixers. I didn't even know until one of my professors asked if I'd enjoyed that panel on real estate marketing. Then there was the Amazon incident. We had a shared family Prime account. She somehow used my saved card to rack up $800 in charges, decor, dresses, candles with names like Midnight Leather. She called it an accident. "I thought it was my card," she said. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. I always did. But after that, I started building walls, digital ones. I changed my passwords, locked up my important documents in a small fire-safe box I kept in my closet. I started monitoring my credit regularly. I thought I was being paranoid. Now I know I was being smart. While Sam floated between jobs, assistant, realtor, fashion blogger, I built my career brick by brick. After college, I landed a junior analyst position at Capital Meridian Partners, one of the top wealth management firms in Texas. It wasn't flashy, but it was solid. I worked late, I volunteered for the tough clients, I got my CFP, passed my Series 65, and 5 years later, I was a senior advisor managing seven-figure portfolios. My apartment in South Congress wasn't huge, but it was mine. I paid for every piece of furniture in cash. I had a fully funded emergency fund, a diversified investment portfolio, and a 5-year plan that included buying my first home by 30. I was the financial dream girl your grandma wishes you'd marry. But I was also lonely. Until Daniel. We met at a local charity fundraiser. He was a pediatric physical therapist. Warm, grounded, the kind of guy who brought coffee to nurses on night shifts just because. He didn't care that I was more practical than romantic. He didn't flinch at my spreadsheets. He said I balanced him, and I believed him. He didn't love me in spite of my intensity. He loved me because of it. We took it slow, but it was real. And for the first time, I let myself imagine a different kind of life. Not just safe, but full. We started looking at condos casually. Nothing fancy, just something we could grow into. I had the savings. I had the job. And I had someone I trusted beside me. Then came my 29th birthday. Daniel threw a small dinner at my place. My parents drove in from Round Rock. Sam showed up late with her husband Brandon and a bottle of $200 champagne, something she couldn't possibly afford on her retail assistant's salary. Her card read, "To New Beginnings." She hugged me tighter than usual and whispered, "Everything's gonna change soon, sis." I smiled, thinking maybe she knew something I didn't. Maybe Daniel had talked to her about a proposal. Maybe she was finally getting her life together. I didn't realize that by new beginnings, she meant my beginning would end. The following Tuesday, I got the notification. And just like that, everything I'd built, every number, every file, every carefully calculated decision was hanging by a thread. But here's the thing. When you grow up with someone like Samantha, you learn how to hold your ground in silence. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Not at first. I investigated. I called the bank. I pulled my credit reports. I checked the property address, and when it all pointed back to my sister, I knew exactly what I had to do, because this wasn't about a Barbie or a dress anymore. This was about my name. My future, my life. I'm not someone who panics easily. I work in finance. My job is to stay calm when markets crash and clients freak out. But that morning, I wasn't a financial advisor. I was a woman whose entire life had just been hijacked through a tiny screen on her phone. After staring at that $4,267.89 payment, due alert like it was written in another language, I tapped into the banking app with shaking fingers. And there it was, as clear as daylight. An active mortgage loan under my name. Not just any loan, $800,000. It had been processed 6 weeks prior. Fixed interest rate, 30-year term, and I was already scheduled to make the first monthly payment in 7 days. The worst part? My information was perfect. It had my full legal name, my social security number, my current employer, even my exact salary. The only thing that didn't match was reality. I hadn't applied for anything. There was a button at the bottom of the screen, View Property. I hesitated. I wasn't sure I wanted to know, but I tapped it anyway. A new page loaded with photos. Beautiful photos. The kind you'd see in a luxury home magazine. White columns, manicured hedges, a wide brick driveway curving toward a 3-car garage. Inside, vaulted ceilings, custom cabinetry, a gourmet kitchen with a 6-burner gas stove. It was stunning. Exactly the kind of house you fantasize about after one too many hours on Zillow. And then the address appeared in bold letters. 3429, Whispering Oak Lane, Cedar Park. My blood ran cold. I knew that address. I'd been to an open house on that street with Samantha just last July. She was obsessed with the area, said it was bougie but not snobby, whatever that meant. She practically drooled walking through the halls of that colonial home. I remember her saying, "One day, I'm gonna live in a place like this. Just wait." Apparently, one day arrived faster than I realized. I logged out of the app and immediately called the bank. I barely remember the hold music or the robotic menu. When a real human finally answered, Gregory Thompson from Northeast Federal, I almost broke into tears. "Ma'am, can you verify the last 4 digits of your social security number?" he asked. I did, without hesitation. His voice turned cautious, like he already sensed something wasn't right. "Okay, I'm looking at the account now. The mortgage loan was processed and approved just over a month ago. All documentation appears complete. Application was submitted online, electronically signed, and supported with full employment and financial verification." I gripped the phone tighter. "That's impossible. I didn't apply for any mortgage." "Certainly not for a house in Cedar Park." There was a pause. "You didn't authorize this loan?" "No," I said firmly. "This is identity theft." That word tasted strange coming out of my mouth. Identity theft. I used to teach seminars warning clients about it. I used to scoff at people who reused passwords or clicked sketchy links. I had done everything right, and still, someone had slipped past every safeguard I'd built. "I'll transfer you to our fraud department immediately," Gregory said, his tone shifting from neutral to genuinely concerned. "You'll want to freeze all activity and start a full investigation." The next 2 hours were a blur of hold music, robotic disclaimers, and escalating panic. I filed a formal fraud claim, scheduled an in-person verification meeting for the next day, and initiated a freeze with all 3 credit bureaus. Then I pulled my full credit reports from Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. That's when things got worse. Not only was the $800,000 mortgage sitting there in bold, bright letters, but 3 new credit cards had been opened in my name in the past 30 days. Combined balances, $52,400. The purchases included high-end furniture, electronics, and wait for it, appliances. There was a receipt for a $14,000 Sub-Zero fridge, another for a full home theater system from Magnolia, all items delivered to the same address. 3429, Whispering Oak Lane. I felt like I was watching a horror movie, but I was the one trapped inside. The villain wasn't wearing a ski mask or hiding in the shadows. The villain had my last name. I opened Google Maps, typed in the address. The screen filled with a street view. There it was again. That dream house. The same one I walked through with Samantha months ago. Except now, it had flower beds planted out front, curtains in the windows, a new mailbox with the name Phillips stenciled in gold. Samantha's married name. I zoomed out. Lakeside Estates. Gated community. Median home price, $1.1 million. I sat back in my desk chair, barely breathing, and then I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I checked her Instagram. There she was, standing in front of the house, one hand on her hip, the other holding up a set of keys. The caption, "Dreams come true, manifestation plus hustle equals #blessed, #new home, Phillips Palace." The comments were full of people fawning over her. "OMG, Sam, you deserve this. That kitchen is goals. When's the housewarming?" I scrolled through the photos. Her and Brandon drinking champagne in front of a fireplace. Their dog curled up on a $4,000 restoration hardware couch. a selfie in what looked like a $20,000 walk-in closet, and it all hit me at once. She didn't just use my name, she used my future. She stole the condo I was saving for, the financial freedom I'd fought tooth and nail to earn, the stability I'd spent a decade building. Also, she could play house in a neighborhood I could barely afford to park in. I texted her, "Call me urgent." No reply. I called twice. Straight to voicemail. I texted again. "I know what you did." Still nothing. Then I called my mom. "Hey, honey," she answered cheerfully. "Did you get the invite to Sam's housewarming party?" My stomach turned. "Wait, they're throwing a party?" "Yeah." "This Saturday, you didn't see the email?" I opened my inbox and scrolled until I found it. Subject line, Phillips Palace Grand Opening. Sent 3 days ago. I clicked it open. Gold font, animated confetti, an RSVP link. At the bottom, "We can't wait to show you our dream home. Love, Sam Brandon." Dream home. My debt. That's when I knew this wasn't just fraud. This was betrayal. Deep, deliberate, and unforgivable. And I wasn't going to let it slide. Not this time. There's a moment in every thriller when the main character realizes they're not crazy, that the signs they've been seeing weren't in their head. That moment had just arrived for me. I wasn't being paranoid. I wasn't making things up. My sister, my own flesh and blood, had taken over my financial identity, and she was living inside a lie built on my name. But I wasn't going to play the victim. I was going to uncover everything, piece by piece. Dollar by dollar, I started with the credit reports. Every single account that wasn't mine, I flagged. 3 new credit cards opened under Emily S. Carter with addresses pointing to Whispering Oak Lane. Total damage just over $52,000. One of the cards had a pending charge from a high-end electronics store in Round Rock, 2 85-inch TVs and a surround sound system. I filed fraud reports with each bureau and froze my credit tighter than Fort Knox. Then I contacted a credit monitoring service and paid for full identity theft protection, something I'd recommended to clients 100 times but had never bothered with myself. The irony wasn't lost on me. Next, I went back to that mortgage application. I requested the original digital paperwork from the bank's fraud team. They emailed over a copy that afternoon. When I opened it, I nearly dropped my laptop. My signature was there, or something that looked like it. It wasn't quite right. The loop in the E was too tight. The C curved back more than mine ever did. It was familiar, but not mine. Like someone had practiced copying it 100 times, then hit submit. I scrolled further. Attached were scans of my driver's license, my pay stubs, my W-2. My full financial portfolio was laid bare across that PDF like a blueprint of my life. But I hadn't submitted any of it. Then I remembered something. 3 months earlier, I'd gone out to dinner with Samantha at a restaurant downtown. At some point that evening, my wallet had gone missing. I'd assumed I'd dropped it, panicked for a day, then canceled and replaced everything. I didn't think twice. But what if I hadn't dropped it? What if I'd been targeted? What if she'd planned that dinner all along? I felt sick, cold, dizzy, furious, but I knew speculation wasn't enough. I needed proof. That's when I remembered someone Daniel had mentioned a few months ago, a former client of his who worked as a private investigator. He'd helped a family track down a caretaker who was draining their mother's retirement account. His name was Maxwell Jenkins. I gave him a call. "You come highly recommended," I told him. "And I need help exposing something personal and illegal." He met me the next day at a coffee shop in downtown Austin. Older guy, late 50s maybe. Ex-military, calm eyes, didn't flinch when I handed him the folder with all the paperwork. He flipped through the pages in silence, then looked up and asked one question. "You trust your sister?" I shook my head. "Not anymore." "Then let's get started." Maxwell began digging immediately. I gave him access to everything I had: emails, bank records, social media profiles. He told me to sit tight but keep watching. People like Samantha, he said, always leave breadcrumbs, and oh boy, did she. While waiting for Maxwell's report, I went back to her social media accounts. I started looking at every single post, every comment, every location tag. There were photos taken inside the house showing pieces of mail on the counter, some addressed to Emily Carter. In one, Brandon was holding up a glass of wine in front of a marble fireplace. Behind him on the table, a loan disclosure packet with my name peeking out of the folder. I zoomed in. Screenshot. Saved. Evidence. Then came the tipping point. Maxwell called me 2 nights later. "I think you'll want to see this," he said. Samantha had her laptop serviced at a repair shop in Pflugerville last month. The tech remembered her, said she asked how to clean up some documents using Photoshop. She specifically asked about editing signatures. He sent me the shop receipt, a copy of the work order with her name on it, and even a surveillance screenshot from the store security cam. There she was, Samantha Phillips, handing over her silver MacBook with a smile. The pieces were locking into place. She had the stolen ID. She had the digital documents. She had the motive. And now, she had the laptop trail to prove intent. I sent everything to the bank's fraud division. They escalated the case immediately and looped in their internal legal team. Gregory Thompson called me personally. "Ms. Carter, this is no longer just a case of mistaken identity. We're now investigating mortgage fraud with potential federal implications." I hung up the phone and stared at my ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. This wasn't a bad prank. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, calculated criminal theft. I was furious, but beneath that, I was heartbroken. There's a special kind of grief that comes from realizing the villain in your story shares your DNA. I tried calling Samantha one last time. She picked up. "Hey, sis?" Her voice was overly cheerful. "Can't talk long. We're picking out new tiles for the master bath." I nearly laughed. "You mean my master bath? The one you bought with my credit?" Silence. "I know everything, Sam. The loan? The forged signature, the laptop, the fake documents. You committed fraud." More silence, then. "Emily, you're being dramatic. We were going to pay it back." "You're unbelievable." I could barely keep my voice steady. "You used my life as a shortcut, and I'm going to make sure you face the consequences." "You don't mean that," she said quickly. "We're sisters." "Exactly," I replied. "And sisters don't destroy each other's futures." I hung up, and that was the last time I heard Samantha's voice before the housewarming. I met with my attorney the next morning, Jessica Martinez, a sharp and relentless specialist in financial crimes. When I showed her the evidence, she didn't even blink. "We've got enough for a civil case, and if you want to, a criminal one too," she said, flipping through the file. "It's your call." I didn't answer right away. I needed time, I needed air, I needed strength. So I drove out to Lake Travis, parked my car near the water, and just sat there watching the waves ripple under a gray sky. I thought about every time I'd excused Samantha, every time I'd cleaned up her mess, justified her actions, told myself, that's just how she is. Not this time. This time I would choose myself, because love without boundaries isn't love, it's enablement. And I was done enabling the person who had no problem turning my life into her backup plan. The next step was clear: expose her. There's a moment when betrayal stops being theoretical and becomes tangible, not a concept, not a possibility, but a punch-in-the-gut truth you can't unsee. I had reached that moment, and it was heavier than I ever imagined. I'd uncovered the fraud, I'd collected the evidence, I'd heard the excuses, but none of that compared to what came next: facing the people who had raised us, who had watched us grow up, and realizing they didn't want to believe me. Not because the facts weren't clear, but because the truth was too ugly to sit with. The next evening, I asked my parents to come over. No distractions, no Samantha. Just the three of us. They showed up around 6 o'clock. My mom brought lemon bars. My dad wore his usual weekend jeans and that faded University of Texas hoodie he refused to throw away. They looked normal, like it was any other visit, but my hands were shaking when I handed them the folder. "What's this, sweetheart?" my mom asked gently. "It's about Sam," I said. "I need you both to read it before you say anything." They sat side by side on the couch, flipping through the printed documents, the mortgage papers, the forged signature, the screenshots from Samantha's Instagram, the tech shop receipt showing she'd asked how to edit PDF files, the surveillance photo. My mom's lips parted, my dad went quiet, so quiet it was eerie. I waited. Finally, my father looked up. "Emily, this is serious." "Yes," I said. "It's criminal, and it's real." My mom swallowed hard. There has to be some kind of mistake. Maybe Brandon, maybe he did it without telling her. That broke me. I stood up, pacing the small space between the couch and the bookshelf. "Mom," I said, voice tight, "how many times has Samantha taken something from me and blamed someone else, or made it look like an accident?" Silence. "The Barbie when I was 6, my clothes in high school, my student ID in college, my credit card. And you always said the same thing. Be generous, don't make a fuss." She didn't mean to. I turned to them, anger and grief twisting together in my chest. Well, now she's taken my identity, my financial future, my ability to buy a home, and I'm not going to be generous about that. My father put his head in his hands. I'd never seen him look so defeated. "If what you're saying is true," he murmured, "Sam could go to prison." "I know," I whispered. "Do you think I want that?" My mom started to cry. She reached out for my hand, but I pulled back. Not out of cruelty, but self-preservation. "You always protect her," I said. "But who's protecting me?" They didn't answer. And maybe that was the answer. That night, after they left, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head, the moments we'd all overlooked, the things I'd let slide, the twisted logic of loving someone who weaponized your trust. Daniel came over. He didn't ask questions. He didn't offer advice. He just sat beside me as I stared at the wall, his hand wrapped around mine like an anchor. Eventually, I broke the silence. "Do you think she ever really loved me?" He paused. Then, carefully, "I think Samantha loves herself more." That hit hard, but it felt true. He continued gently. "Some people confuse love with entitlement. They think because you're family, they're allowed to take and never give back. And if you stop them, you're the bad guy." I let the silence stretch, and then I said the words I'd been afraid to say out loud. "I want to confront her." Daniel didn't flinch. "Then I'll be right there with you." The next day, I received a formal invitation in the mail, a thick, glossy card with gold embossing. At the top, "You're cordially invited to the Phillips Palace Grand Housewarming." Inside, in Samantha's handwriting, "Can't wait to show you our new place. You're gonna be so jealous. Love you, sis." It wasn't just taunting, it was triumph. She thought she'd gotten away with it. I stared at that card for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called Gregory Thompson at the bank. "Would you be willing to accompany me to the party?" I asked. As a representative of the bank. He hesitated. "That's not exactly standard protocol." "I know," I said. "But nothing about this is standard, and I'm not going there to fight. I'm going there to force her to face what she's done, with witnesses." He sighed. "Then, I'll bring the documents, and a legal observer." I hung up and felt for the first time in weeks something other than fear. I felt resolve. I reached out to Maxwell Jenkins, told him what I was planning, asked if he could be there too, with every scrap of evidence he had. He didn't hesitate. "She picked the wrong sister to screw over," he said simply. "Let's do this right." The plan came together quickly. We'd meet a block away from the house at 4:30. The party started at 5. The spare key was listed in the appraiser's access file. The code was 5829. We would enter before anyone else, wait inside. And when Samantha walked in, she'd see me standing in the middle of her dream home, flanked by a bank fraud investigator and a private detective. My house, my name, my consequences. For once, she would be the one caught off guard. There's a moment where pain transforms, where grief calcifies into resolve. For me, it wasn't dramatic. There was no cinematic music swelling in the background. It was quiet, cold, precise. I was standing in my kitchen staring at that ridiculous gold housewarming invitation, and I thought, this is it. No more waiting, no more crying into Daniel's t-shirts. No more asking myself why. I knew why. Because I'd spent my whole life playing defense against Samantha's chaos. This time, I was going on offense. Step 1, finalize the team. I met with Jessica Martinez, my attorney, a brilliant legal mind who'd handled white-collar crime cases across the state. She didn't waste time with sympathy. She respected facts. I laid everything out. Documents, emails, screenshots, even Maxwell's footage from the tech repair shop. She flipped through the file silently, then looked up with a cool expression. "This is airtight. We can go civil, we can go criminal, or we can hold both over her head like a guillotine and see if she caves." "I want her to admit it," I said. "Publicly, not just to me. To everyone who thinks she's this golden girl with a cute dog and a house she totally earned." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "You're going to confront her?" I nodded. "At the party. She invited me, remember?" Jessica leaned back. "You really want to go scorched earth." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Step 2, coordinate the takedown. Gregory Thompson from Northeast Federal agreed to be there as an official bank representative. He'd bring certified copies of the fraudulent loan, forged documents, and internal investigation notes. He also contacted the bank's legal risk department, and they authorized him to deliver a formal notice of liability transfer, conditional on confession and property deed reassignment. Maxwell Jenkins, my private investigator, said he'd be there with printed timelines, the repair shop statements, and geo-IP logs linking the loan application back to Samantha's Wi-Fi. Daniel offered to drive me. "You don't need to walk into that house alone," he said. "I won't be alone," I told him. "Not this time." But before the confrontation, I made one final attempt to give my parents a chance to do the right thing. I called them. "I'm confronting Samantha at the housewarming," I said. "You can either talk to her first and get her to come clean, or you can find out with everyone else when I do it myself." My dad sighed heavily on the other end. "Emily, we talked to her." I waited. "She denied everything," he said. "Said you were jealous, that you were making it up." That stung more than I expected. Not the lie itself, I was used to those, but the fact that they believed her, again. "Then you'll see the truth for yourselves," I said. "Just be ready." Step 3, reclaim control. That Friday night before the party, I sat alone with a notebook and wrote 2 things: everything I had lost and everything I was taking back. My credit score had dropped 197 points. I was on the hook for over $850,000 in debt. I'd been denied pre-approval for a condo 2 days earlier due to high outstanding obligations, but here's what I hadn't lost: my voice, my mind, my proof, my power. For 29 years, I'd stayed in my lane, worked hard, paid every bill on time, followed every rule. While Samantha spun her web of manipulation, I built my life like a fortress, brick by brick. Now she had walked in and tried to claim it as hers. But there was one thing she didn't understand. I may have been quiet all these years, but I wasn't weak. I was a storm held back by logic and loyalty. And she just triggered the floodgates. Saturday came. I wore a simple black dress. No heels, no sparkle, just clean, sharp lines and a silver pendant my dad gave me at graduation. Daniel drove. The closer we got to Whispering Oak Lane, the tighter my chest felt, but I didn't waver. Not this time. We met Maxwell and Gregory 2 blocks from the house at 4:30. The sky was clear. The street was lined with imported cars and white hydrangeas blooming along the curb. Gregory carried a leather briefcase. Maxwell wore a tan blazer and mirrored sunglasses. Daniel slipped his hand into mine, gave it one firm squeeze. We walked together to the gate, found the lockbox, typed in the code 5829. The box clicked open. Inside was the key to my stolen future. I opened the door to 3429 Whispering Oak Lane and stepped inside. It was even more surreal in person. The kind of place that looked like an HGTV episode exploded. Double staircase, mahogany floors, designer lighting, a kitchen so pristine I doubted Samantha had ever boiled water in it. We walked through slowly, documenting everything. Maxwell took photos. Gregory laid out the papers on the marble island like evidence in a courtroom. The caterers gave us nervous looks. One of them asked if we were the decorators. I answered plainly, "No, I'm the real homeowner, the one whose name is on the mortgage. The one whose identity was stolen to pay for this." She turned pale and quietly backed into the pantry. We positioned ourselves in the living room just before 5 o'clock. The first guest would arrive soon. I stood dead center, hands clasped calmly, eyes on the door. And then I heard her voice, bright, loud, effortlessly breezy. "The florals better be set or I swear—" "Oh, the garage is open, babe. We can unload now." Footsteps. Shopping bags rustling, laughter. The kind of oblivious, smug joy you only hear from someone who thinks they've won. Then Samantha turned the corner and saw me. She froze. "Emily?" she said, confused. "What are you doing here?" I didn't move. "Hello, Sam." Brandon followed behind her, carrying a box of champagne flutes. He stopped short, sensing the tension. Gregory stepped forward. "Samantha Phillips? I'm Gregory Thompson, fraud investigations with Northeast Federal Bank." Her mouth opened, but no words came. Maxwell followed, placing a thick folder on the coffee table. "This is the full documentation proving identity theft, mortgage fraud, and use of forged financial documents." Brandon looked from the folder to Samantha. What the hell is he talking about? And in that moment, I saw it. Everything she'd built on top of my life, cracking. I didn't gloat, I didn't scream, I didn't need to. Because for the first time in our lives, I had taken control. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I wasn't here for revenge. I was here for the truth. And that truth was about to explode in the middle of my sister's carefully curated dream. We had everything in place. Gregory Thompson, Northeast Federal's fraud investigator, stood by the fireplace with his leather portfolio. Maxwell Jenkins, my private investigator, leaned casually by the staircase with a folder thicker than a criminal trial brief. Daniel sat quietly behind me, present but letting me lead. And me? I stood right in the middle of the grand living room Samantha built with my stolen credit. At 5:02 p.m., the door from the garage opened. Her voice floated in first. "The charcuterie should be chilled by now, right? Oh, can you grab the champagne from the trunk? Cheers." Clicks of heels against hardwood, the jingle of keys, and then she saw me. The smile on her face collapsed like a house of cards. "Emily?" She blinked. "You're early. How did you even get in?" I didn't blink. I didn't budge. I used the access key listed in the mortgage appraisal documents, the ones filed under my name. Brandon entered a second later, holding a case of Veuve Clicquot. He looked between us, confused. What's going on? Gregory stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. Mr. and Mrs. Phillips, I'm Gregory Thompson with Northeast Federal. I'm here today regarding the fraudulent mortgage obtained on this property using Ms. Emily Carter's identity. Samantha's face drained of all color. Brandon nearly dropped the champagne. Fraudulent? He repeated. What? No, that can't be right. We bought this house. We signed the papers. I spoke now, keeping my voice measured. You didn't, Brandon. She did, using my name, my credit, and my stolen financial documents. You didn't buy this house. You stole it. From me. Samantha snapped out of her frozen state. Her voice rose, high and tight. Are you kidding me right now, Emily? This is insane. You're embarrassing yourself. This is my house. Ours. No, Sam, I said, stepping closer. This is my loan, my signature forged. My W-2 faked. My driver's license scanned. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a felony. Just then, the doorbell rang. Guests began arriving. Neighbors, old friends, work acquaintances. One by one, they stepped into the entryway, champagne bottles and gift bags in hand, only to stop and stare at the tension thick in the air. Samantha plastered on a brittle smile. Welcome, just, some family drama. You know how sisters are. I wasn't going to let her spin the narrative again. Not this time. I turned to the room, raised my voice just enough to carry. Actually, since everyone's here, this is the perfect time. I'd like to make a toast. Samantha's eyes went wide. She lunged forward to stop me, but I was already lifting my glass of water. To new beginnings, I said clearly, and to finally exposing old lies. The room went silent. I'm Emily Carter. I'm the legal identity behind this house. The $800,000 mortgage loan used to buy this property was taken out in my name without my consent. Forged. Faked. Stolen. Gasps echoed through the room. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Others froze completely. Samantha's voice cracked. That's a lie. You're lying, Emily. You've always been jealous. Jealous? I cut her off sharp. Of what? Fraud? Debt? Manipulation? Gregory stepped forward, holding up a binder. Ladies and gentlemen, I have in my possession certified documentation proving the fraudulent use of Ms. Carter's identity, as well as digital forensics linking the mortgage application to the Phillips home IP address, Maxwell added. And I have tech repair records, a recorded testimony, and screenshots of social media posts confirming occupancy, possession, and confession, all logged, all time-stamped. Brandon looked at Samantha, horror creeping across his face. You said this loan was legit, that we were qualified. You told me it came from a trust fund. It was going to be temporary, she shrieked. I was going to refinance it in our names once things stabilized. I stepped in again. And what if they didn't? What if Brandon's company didn't bounce back? What if your fake paperwork got caught? You weren't just gambling with my credit, Sam. You were gambling with my future. At that moment, my parents walked in. My mom took one look at the scene and froze. My dad's jaw clenched like steel. Is it true? He asked Samantha. His voice low, broken. She said nothing. Brandon answered for her. It's all true, every bit. She used Emily's name to get the house. Faked the documents, lied to all of us. My mother let out a sob and sat down. My father stared straight ahead. It was the first time I saw him look at Samantha not as a daughter, but as a stranger. Samantha's voice broke into pieces. You don't understand. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I was tired of being behind, of struggling, of watching you win at everything while I scraped by. I just wanted a taste of that life. I walked toward her, slowly, calmly. You didn't take a taste, Sam. You swallowed my entire future, my house, my credit, my chance to build a life with Daniel, and you did it with a smile on your face. She sank into a chair, mascara streaking her cheeks, unable to look me in the eye. The room emptied slowly. One by one, guests made quiet exits. No one said goodbye. No one hugged her. When only family remained, Jessica, my attorney, entered with the final documents. She laid them on the coffee table. "This is your only chance," I said. "You sign these today, deed transfer, confession, restitution agreement, or I press charges. And you go to jail." Brandon looked away. "If she doesn't sign, we're done. I'm not going to prison for something I didn't do." Samantha's hand shook as she picked up the pen. She signed every page, slowly, painfully. When she was done, she slid them across the table. "I'm sorry," she whispered. But I didn't answer, not then. Because sorry doesn't fix a stolen life. Sorry doesn't rebuild your name from the rubble. Sorry doesn't erase betrayal. That was the day I watched my sister's illusion crumble. And the day I reclaimed everything she tried to erase, not with anger, not with revenge, but with the truth. When people talk about justice, they rarely mention the paperwork. They talk about the moment of confrontation, the reveal, the takedown, the drama. But what happens after that? After the party's over, the lies are exposed, and the house built on fraud is stripped bare? What happens? When the cameras go dark and you're left standing alone in the ruins of someone else's fantasy? That was me. The morning after the confrontation, I woke up in my small apartment with the echoes of last night still buzzing in my head. I hadn't slept. The adrenaline had long faded, replaced by something heavier. Exhaustion, bitterness, and a hollow kind of grief I couldn't explain. Samantha had signed the confession, the deed transfer, the restitution plan. But this wasn't a victory parade. It felt more like the aftermath of a wildfire, and I was left to rebuild from the ash. Jessica, my attorney, walked me through my options. The confession was legally binding. The house would now be listed under my name officially. Samantha and Brandon had 30 days to vacate the property. The fraudulent accounts would be disputed, the mortgage reversed, and a special investigation unit would work with the credit bureaus to begin repairing my credit profile. I was still responsible for monitoring every financial detail. I had to sign affidavits, attend interviews, compile reports. I became my own case manager, fighting for the identity someone else had tried to rewrite. Meanwhile, Samantha moved out quietly. No Instagram posts, no dramatic captions, just a slow, embarrassed fade from the house she once called Hat Phillips Palace. Brandon, to his credit, filed for divorce. He told me privately, "I didn't know who I was married to until that night." I believed him, and yet some things were harder to untangle, like my relationship with my parents. They didn't defend Samantha after the party, but they didn't defend me either, not at first. They were frozen, caught between two daughters and a lifetime of enabling silence. One Sunday, my father showed up at my apartment unannounced. He brought a box of old family photos. "We should have done more," he said, setting it down. "We let it go too far." I didn't respond right away. I just opened the box. Inside were pictures of me and Samantha as kids, matching Halloween costumes, school plays, beach vacations. I wasn't sure if he brought them to remind me we'd once been close, or to make me feel guilty for where we were now. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt released. Because for the first time, I wasn't the sister cleaning up the mess. I was the one drawing the line. My mom eventually asked if I wanted to come over for Sunday dinner again. I said I needed time and space and therapy. So that's what I did. I found a trauma-informed therapist who specialized in familial betrayal. I told her everything, from the Barbie incident when I was 6, to the stolen dress in high school, to the 6-figure mortgage forged in my name. She said something that stuck with me. You didn't just suffer identity theft, you suffered relational theft. Your sister used the bond between you as a weapon. Yeah, that landed, because the hardest part wasn't fixing my credit. It was fixing the part of me that still wanted to protect her. Recovery took time. The credit bureaus eventually removed the fraudulent mortgage from my record. The new accounts were closed. My credit score inched back up month by month from 532 to 607 to 680. Then finally, nearly a year later, back to 810. I sold the house. It felt poetic in a way. The same house that was once a monument to Samantha's deception became the key to my freedom. The profit allowed me to pay off my small remaining debt, make a donation to an identity theft victims fund, and finally, buy a modest condo downtown. One that I chose, one that I paid for, one that I deserved. Daniel proposed 6 months after the confrontation. Not in some flashy Instagram moment, but over takeout on a Tuesday night. He said, "You've survived more than most people ever will, and you still believe in love. That's the woman I want beside me." I cried. And then I said yes. We got married in a small ceremony by Lake Travis, just 30 people, no frills, no filters. Samantha wasn't invited, but she sent a card. It didn't say much. Just 6 words. "I hope you find peace. S." I didn't respond, but I didn't tear it up either. I keep it in the same fireproof safe where I now store every important document, not out of sentimentality, out of memory. Of how far I've come. Samantha eventually took a job at a retail store in San Antonio. From what I've heard, she's attending a weekly financial counseling group and hasn't missed a session. Good for her, truly, but that doesn't mean we're close. And that's okay. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. It just requires clarity. And I have that now. I no longer wonder if I was too harsh, too cold, too calculating. Because what I did saved my life. I protected the one thing Samantha always underestimated, my ability to rise. From ashes, from betrayal, from stolen identity. Because here's the thing about taking control. It's not about getting revenge. It's about refusing to let someone else write the ending of your story. And my ending. It starts with my real name, on a clean mortgage, with a man I love, in a home I earned. And this time, no one's stealing that from me. You'd think that after exposing a fraud, reclaiming a house, and watching your sister's carefully built fantasy collapse in front of her friends, you'd feel whole again. But I didn't. Justice isn't a reset button. It's a long, brutal construction site. And the truth is, rebuilding your life after betrayal takes more than court documents and closed accounts. It takes facing yourself, brick by emotional brick. In the days after Samantha signed the restitution agreement and handed over the deed, I walked through that house alone. No music, no lights. Just echoing rooms full of expensive furniture and expensive silence. This was the house she'd built on my name, my credit, my trust, and now it was mine, legally. But it didn't feel like home. Every wall felt contaminated, tainted by deceit. I couldn't sleep there, couldn't eat there, couldn't breathe there without thinking of her voice saying, "Someday I'll live in a place like this." Well, someday had passed, and now I had a decision to make: keep the house or let it go. I chose to let it go. With guidance from my financial advisor and a lot of late-night pro and con lists, I decided to list the property for rent. It was too soon to sell. The market was shifting, and I'd already lost enough. But by renting it out, I could use the income to slowly repair the damage to my credit, my stability, my peace of mind. I hired a property management company to handle everything. I didn't want to deal with calls about toilets or landscaping. I just wanted distance. That space allowed me to start healing. And with every rent payment that came in, small, consistent, boring, I felt a little more grounded. a little more mine. Meanwhile, I turned back to my own dream. Homeownership. Not stolen. Not rushed, not for show. Real. Daniel and I started looking again. This time, it was different. No pressure. No Instagram fantasies. Just quiet Sunday mornings walking through open houses with coffee in hand. We didn't want luxury. We wanted longevity. We found it in a 2-bedroom condo just outside downtown Austin. Exposed brick, decent kitchen, a tiny balcony with enough space for a grill and a folding chair. Nothing fancy, but it felt honest. The seller accepted our offer. The down payment came partially from the rental income and partially from my emergency savings, still intact, because even after everything, I'd protected the fundamentals. Funny, right? After all that was stolen from me, what saved me was my discipline. Credit repair took months. I stayed on the phone with bureaus, answered every dispute letter, resubmitted documentation more times than I can count. It was like untangling a necklace knotted for years, but I kept at it. Score by score, month by month, the numbers climbed back. 590, 640, 710. By the time we closed on the new condo, I was back above 760. Not perfect, but strong. And the day we signed those papers, Daniel looked at me and said, "This one's real, and it's yours." I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was safe. The financial recovery was tangible. But the emotional recovery, that took more work. I started therapy. Weekly at first, then bi-weekly. We talked about control, about trauma, about how I'd learned to play small in the name of peace. I began setting boundaries in every part of my life, not just with Samantha, but with everyone. At work, I stopped being the person who said yes to every extra task. With friends, I stopped pretending I was okay when I wasn't. With my parents, I made it clear I would no longer be the emotional shock absorber for the family. They could have a relationship with both of us, but not at my expense. To their credit, they respected that. My dad even started seeing a therapist of his own. My mom began reading books on family systems. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Samantha? She moved to San Antonio, took a job at a local boutique, downsized to a studio apartment. Her emails to me became less defensive and more accountable. Still short. Still rare, but real. She once wrote, "I'm learning how to live inside my limits for the first time in my life. And I don't expect your forgiveness, just thank you for the chance to learn." I didn't write back, but I saved the email. Because recovery doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it means recognition of what was broken and what you refuse to break again. Rebuilding wasn't a single moment. It was 1,000 little choices to keep going, to show up for myself, to trust again, slowly, to laugh again, loudly, to believe that the version of me standing here now is stronger, wiser, and more grounded than the girl who once thought being the good sister meant being silent. Now, I speak. Now, I protect what's mine. Now, I know what kind of life I want and who's allowed to be in it. I rebuilt, not back to who I was, but forward into who I'm becoming. They say time heals all wounds. I don't think that's true. Time doesn't heal. What heals is truth, boundaries, work. Forgiveness, not the passive kind, but the kind you fight for every single day. It's been 18 months since that bank notification flipped my world upside down, since I learned that the person who knew me best could still choose to hurt me the most. But I'm not telling this story so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling it because someone out there needs to hear it. Someone out there is going through the unthinkable and doesn't know how to take their life back. Here's what I know now. You don't need closure from the person who hurt you to start healing. You don't need approval to draw a line. You don't need to explain why you're protecting your peace. You just need to decide, no more. No more making yourself smaller so others feel comfortable. No more staying silent so they don't feel guilty. No more forgiveness without change. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with Samantha. Maybe one day we'll sit in the same room without tension in the air. Maybe not. Either way, I'm at peace with it, because my peace no longer depends on her or anyone else. Today, I'm in a healthy marriage. I own a home I love, not one built on stolen dreams, but on honesty, on effort, on resilience. I talk to my parents regularly, and for the first time, they really listen. And me? I sleep well, not because everything is perfect, but because I finally know how to protect what matters. My story is no longer about what was taken from me, it's about what I chose to rebuild. Beat. If you've been through something similar, if your trust was shattered, your peace disturbed, your identity stolen, whether literally or emotionally, know this: you are not alone, you are not broken, and this is not where your story ends. It's where it begins. Thank you for listening. And if this story spoke to you, if you saw even a piece of yourself in it, leave a comment. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that like button. Subscribe. Because we all deserve to feel seen. And sometimes, healing begins with a story. My name is Emily Carter. And I took my life back. If I had to sum up everything I went through into one lesson, it's this. Family doesn't give someone the right to cross your boundaries. Blood may tie us together, but it doesn't entitle anyone to your silence, your savings, or your future. For years, I let things slide, small betrayals dressed up as childhood rivalry, accidents, or guilt-tripped apologies. But small betrayals grow, and when you don't confront them, they don't disappear. They evolve. Until one day you wake up and your sister's living in $1 million house she bought with your name. Standing up to Samantha wasn't just about reclaiming my credit, it was about reclaiming my voice, my right to say, "This stops here." No more apologies for having limits. No more loyalty to dysfunction. No more fear of being the difficult one. Texas taught me strength. Finance taught me discipline. But this taught me courage, the kind that whispers in your ear when no one else is clapping. And if you're listening right now, stuck between forgiveness and self-protection, choose you. Every damn time. Have you ever trusted someone, especially family, only to realize they crossed a line you never thought they would? How did you respond? Did you confront them, forgive, or walk away? Share your story in the comments and let's talk about setting boundaries even when it hurts.